Back, everybody. Black carbon can cause health risks in communities, such as a risk for cancer and heart disease. A new study shows elevated levels of black carbon in both Pascagoula and Gulfport. Joining us now to discuss some potential solutions is the University of Mississippi Assistant Professor of Environmental Toxicology, Dr. Courtney Roper, who participated in the study. Professor Roper, thanks so much for being with us down here on the coast. Why Pascagoula and Gulfport? I know you looked at, what, 6 cities in Mississippi?
Yeah, great question. So we actually had to leverage some existing air pollution samples, which happen to consistently be collected in those two communities.
Okay, we're looking at a graph right now, and this is, you see where the cities in Mississippi are all, with the exception maybe of one, a little bit higher than, I think, what are those, EPA recommendations? That threshold line?
Correct. So this graph here is showing cancer risk levels, and the EPA recommends that levels are below 1. And so our findings with long-term, so a lifetime exposure to black carbon, we're seeing elevated risks of cancer in all 6 communities that we measured.
So when we look at emissions, how is the black carbon generally generated? I mean, Pascagoula, of course, has Chevron, they have Ingalls, so it's very industrial in nature. But really all
Yeah,
around the country, where does black carbon come from?
and that's a great question. So black carbon is typically associated with any kind of incomplete combustion. So that can be industrial sources, transportation. That can also be different types of agricultural burning or wildfires. And that's one of the things that makes studying these pollutants very challenging, is because there's not one specific source that they come from.
So if there really are no regulations, because I was doing some research, correct me if I'm wrong, really no regulations limiting the amount of black carbon in the air. I guess when we look for solutions, would that be, I don't know, an obvious place to start right there?
Well, you solved our problem. So yeah, so right now we don't have any kind of state or federal regulations on black carbon amounts. There are certain air pollutants that are regulated, and reducing those regulated pollutants can help reduce black carbon, but it's not a fix for certain.
And finally, we're almost out of time, Professor Roper. Beyond the health risks, what about the risks to the environment?
Yep. So another great question. Beyond human health effects, there's the potential for increased climate change effects, particularly around increased solar radiation and heating.
And I imagine in less developed countries, this is really a major problem.
Absolutely, especially countries that are ramping up development in industrial processes. And one of the real challenges that we ran into, even conducting this study, is that there aren't a large number of measurements across the world. So it's really hard to compare to other locations.
Yeah, especially in China where they're opening up coal plants every day. Well, thanks so much, Professor Courtney Roper from Ole Miss. Thanks for being with us, okay?
Thanks for having me.